Well, welcome to another edition of the Managing Innovation podcast. And we're delighted today to have with us Marcelo Calbucci, who is a self-confessed, and it's wonderful when you look at his website, technologist, founder, geek, author, and a runner. Now, how on earth you cram all of that into a single day, I don't know, but certainly very impressive. But in particular, I asked Marcelo if he'd share some thoughts with us. He's recently published a fascinating book called the PR FAQ Framework, which is intriguing, but the subtitle tells a great deal more. It's all about adapting Amazon's innovation framework to work for you. And we know Amazon is a pretty innovative player, so that was certainly intriguing enough to ask Marcelo if he'd share some thoughts with us. So Marcelo, thank you so much and welcome. Perhaps we could start, if you wouldn't mind, by a bit of an introduction to you and the journey you've been on that led you to write this book. Where did it all come from?
Thank you for having me, John. It's a pleasure to talk to you about innovation and my book as well. So I'm originally from Brazil. I studied computer science in the 90s, and I moved to the US to work for Microsoft. So at Microsoft, I worked on the Bing search engine for several years. And then I decided to become a founder, entrepreneur. And I spent 18 years building many startups, running many startups and startup studios, both in the US and in the UK. And 3 years ago, I joined Amazon, and I spent a couple of years there. And as soon as I joined Amazon, I ran into this framework, right, that Amazon uses to make strategic decisions. And I was fascinated by it as an entrepreneur who had nothing like that before. That forced me to think about innovation and customer discovery and the MVP and everything else that goes around it. I thought like, wow, this framework really would benefit a lot of founders and product leaders and executives everywhere. So when I left Amazon last year, I was going to do a startup. And then I was like, maybe I should write a book first. So I paused my entrepreneurial journey, although writing a book is very entrepreneurial, wrote the book, published it, and launched a few weeks ago.
Fantastic. That's really interesting. And I'm intrigued by the fact that you've got insights that are relevant for entrepreneurs coming out of a giant corporation. Perhaps you could tell us a little more about the PR FAQ framework and give us some context. What is it that Amazon use and clearly find valuable? And then how might that apply more widely, which is what I understand the book is very much about.
Yeah, that's right. So PRFAQ stands for Press Release and Frequently Asked Questions. And it's a 6-page document that Amazon created. So it could make smart strategic decisions about which business product programs to launch or not, right? So what you do is you write in a narrative format, which is the opposite of what most people do, which is create a PowerPoint, for example, with an idea and then try to convince people that idea is great, or they jump immediately at solving a problem, like building something without taking a step back and thinking critically and deeply first. So the PRFAQ, because it's a narrative, like you write, you don't include images, you don't include diagrams, it's a text that explains what you're doing, why you're doing, what problem you're solving, who you're solving it for, what is the solution, how is that different than what exists today. It helps you understand your gaps on your thinking. Right. And as you're writing, because writing is a process of thinking, you realize, oh, I didn't think about this. So you have to either think or go find the information or find someone who might have the information and bring it back to the document. So the way Amazon uses, and I want more people to use it as well, is any type of decision at the company would be to start, change, or even to shut down a business, a product, a program, a process, a policy, a service. Amazon always uses PRFAQs as a mechanism to discuss it, right? So it's pretty much everything. Like thousands of PRFAQs are reviewed every week at Amazon, by tens of thousands of people. This is a non-stop amount of work. And many of them lead nowhere, right? The decision is like, we shouldn't do this. the opportunity is not right, the opportunity is not good, or the timing is not right. So it's a very effective mechanism for decision making.
It's absolutely fascinating. And of course, it gets right to the heart of this idea behind agile innovation, which is don't plan and all of this business case and then lots and lots of stuff and hope. Try it out and see. And that kind of resonates. And it's clearly diffused very widely in Amazon. What I like about that is it's about stories, and as human beings we kind of get stories. That's how we're kind of hardwired to work with stories, this narrative approach. Could you give a couple of examples of how this actually plays out, with a new product launch, or I quite like what you just said, a decision to stop doing something, which is often quite a tricky one. But could you give us a couple of examples?
Yeah, for sure. It is about story, but it's a combination of the right balance between story and data, right? And it's not about plan, like you said. PR figures don't include like a sophisticated plan of like what we're going to do for the next 18 months. It's really about vision and strategy, right? And I can give one example from Amazon. Actually, many examples from Amazon. Everything that Amazon does is based on a PRFQ. So if you think about the Kindle reader, we started from a PRFAQ. So someone at Amazon wrote that document that explained why we should build a device to help people read ebooks, right? And that document evolved and it got better and got more review from folks around Amazon until you get to a point that it gets approved, right? And then it gets the green light from executives to go build this, right? And that comes with funding and resources and whatever is needed. So that's like an Amazon way to approach this. A more individual way, I have used the PRFAQ to decide if I should write the book or not, right? So if you think about the book is a product that I'm going to try to sell in the market to address the need of some people, founders, entrepreneurs, executives, product leaders. So you can write a PRFAQ about anything really that you want to launch or release or change. And the last example that you mentioned was really like shutting down something, right? So Amazon, we did do that. We did write PRFAQ saying like, today Amazon is canceling this product. Here is why we're doing it. Here is what we're going to do about it. So it's a lot of times people think about innovation as like adding to the world. And I think innovation is everything. It's adding, changing, or removing. So you can apply to all use cases, including government, nonprofit, research. You can use the PRFAQ as well.
No, it's absolutely fascinating. And I do like what you said. It's stories plus data, because I think that the risk is we have very persuasive storytellers who don't actually have anything underneath those stories. But it does remind me, when I first started out in teaching innovation and entrepreneurship, the business case was the thing that we had to look at.
Yeah.
And gosh, there were whole reams of documentation, lots of data, lots of facts we had to assemble in order to make the case. And then this great weighty thing would land on an executive's desk and he or she would make a decision. What changed that dramatically, I think, in the world, certainly of learning about innovation, was the idea of the business model canvas. A simple metaphor, the idea of you're sort of painting on a wall, but you need to consider a number, not a huge number, but a number of areas where you need to find out more information. And that allows it to be a conversation piece, so other people can work on the same canvas and you can discuss and explore and gradually populate it over time. Not surprisingly, it's become an immensely powerful and widely used tool. Mm-hmm. What I'm getting from you is this is very similar. And I don't mean similar to the canvas in structure, yes, but it's the same kind of powerful but simple thing that says, this is what you need, tell us the story, but also tell yourself the story and what you need to find out.
Yeah, I absolutely, I really like the business model canvas. I think it's a fantastic tool. And like I said, the problem with the old business plans is that they were like very complicated plans and expected things to be perfect for a period of time. And as you know, plans are never perfect. So both the business model canvas and the PRFAQ don't expect you to put a plan in place, but they do expect you to understand what you're doing. and who is your customer and what problem you're solving for them and how we're going to get that to the market. So both are very similar. The difference between the business model canvas and the PRFAQ, and by the way, you can use both in combination, you don't need to choose one or the other, is that the business model canvas is very at an overview level. And someone who's not familiar with your business, that's going to review your business model canvas, probably not going to understand. It needs you to be there to present the details of what went into the business model canvas. The PRFAQ addresses that need. You can give your PRFAQ to someone who doesn't understand your business, and they can read it from beginning to end. And at the end, they're going to have a coherent story. They can say like, oh, I get it, what you're trying to do. What is the market? What is the opportunity? How big this could be? All those elements are there because the story is complete with like, full English sentences, not just data points and tables, that helps other people understand. And what that does is it helps you, the owner of this document, the person who wrote this document, to really articulate the story well, right? Because you wrote, it's in your brain, and like you can explain very succinctly to anyone. But also someone else reading it, it's also going to capture really well, and they can tell the story to someone else. So I often think about good plans and good strategies as something that not that you can explain to someone, but someone that was not part of the equation can explain to someone else. Because teams are always, bigger than only your inner circle. And if the information doesn't spread correctly, you're going to find misalignment, misunderstanding, miscommunication, team issues. So all kinds of problems occur. And PRFAQ eliminates a lot of that, including if you have a new employee that joined the company, the first thing you give them the PRFAQ and say like, this is what we're doing, why we're doing, and this is our strategy.
That's lovely, and I really like the sort of persuasive element. That's how, as I said earlier, how human beings communicate. It does raise a question, though, which is, what if I'm not a writer? I mean, in a sense, we know great writers can convince us of almost anything, so the narrative power, but I don't know how to write. How would I use it, and how much does the 6 pages structure help me get that story out?
Yeah, there's two big things that people say when they resist the PRFAQ. One is, I don't know how to write. The other one is, I don't think people are going to read. So, on the I don't know how to write, this is not romantic writing, fiction writing. This is very simple writing. If you know how to write an email, if you know how to write a Slack message, you can write a PRFAQ. It's as simple as that. And in the book, I cover what's called precise writing. Is how do you write your sentences in very simple format that makes it easy for people to digest the information, because they need to be clear, right? You want to avoid certain words that don't deliver value. Words like synergy or platform or things like that, like they might have a meaning, but unless you are concrete about it, people might interpret them differently. So you can write in a very simple way that delivers the value that you expect from the PRFAQ. And on the other side, the reading part, people don't like reading because most of the reading is very boring, right? It's either too long, or they don't have enough story. It's just data, or they only have data. They don't have a story that people can connect to. PRFAQ delivers the balance of data story that make people feel like, oh, this is fascinating, and they really remember that.
No, that's really helpful, and I think that that ability to put something clear and precise together in a structured way early on in the process. I do come back to the fact you don't need to have done the thing. It's more a case of structured thinking about it and then triggering off at least a conversation with others who would be the readers. You've obviously, there's a great deal in the book, and we'll make sure there's a link to the book so people can follow that up. But you talked about yourself as an evangelist. You're very excited by the idea. I can tell just by your body language. Where would you like this message to go, and where would you like PRFAQ to go next in terms of a resource to help innovation happen?
Yeah, as you can see, John, I get really excited about ideas, right? And I've been an entrepreneur for over 20 years now and an innovator my entire life since I was a teenager. One of the problems with people like me and a lot of founders, a lot of innovators inside big companies or startups is that they want to do things, right? They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to think about it. They don't want to write. They just want to do, right? And I think PRFAQ helped me because it helps you take a pause and say, like, let me spend 2 weeks on this document, or maybe just a week, right? And think through a few things before I jump headfirst on this opportunity, right? And what that does is it doesn't necessarily change the opportunity that you're pursuing, but it helps clarify pitfalls and traps that you might find, or things that you don't know, or people that you need to consult with. So it increases the chance of success. It's not guaranteed success. No system guarantees success for a new idea, but I do think the PRFAQ really increases the chance of you being successful in whatever you're innovating.
Yeah, yeah. And what I particularly like is you've described something which is widely applicable. It could be a small local project inside the organization, just an improvement project, but why would you do it? And can you write one right through to a sort of game-changing startup that's going to change the whole world? This has relevance presumably well beyond the world of business. I wonder, could you comment on that, and maybe you have some examples where the approach has been applied elsewhere?
Yeah, it does. I think this is not about business. This is about innovation, right? And business is one manifestation of, like, how do you use innovation, right? And I think you can use that in the education setting, in academic setting. You can use that on research to write a PRFAQ why you should get a grant, right? It helps you. When I was writing the book, I studied, like, how do researchers go about asking for grants, and I watched quite a few videos and was like, wow, obviously they could benefit from a PRFAQ, because when they're writing the grant, they might miss some important aspects. If they write the PRFAQ first, they're going to make sure that they cover everything, the strategy and the vision of what they're trying to do. And then when they go to the grant, the elements are there. But I also think that it's very valuable for nonprofits, right? Nonprofits are not known to be the most innovative in the world. And in the book, I even include one PRFAQ example for a nonprofit organization that is trying to get started, right? So I give an example of, like, how you can use this framework to actually, go seek funding for your nonprofit.
That's really interesting and very exciting. I have to say, I can think of a lot of academic colleagues that might benefit from some of the discipline around that focused, structured, but not necessarily long-winded exposition of ideas. But leaving that aside, Marcelo, you're obviously passionate. You've obviously been on a journey, and this is something which really matters to you. What next? How are you going to take the ideas beyond the book forward? You've had some intriguing thoughts about, or said some intriguing things on your website about startups and your next startup. Where is it all going? Where are you going to be if we had this conversation in a year or so's time?
Yeah, my goal is to evangelize this framework as much as I can right now, John. So I'm going to continue talking to people, writing about it, going to university and talking to students, but also, like, putting some workshops and online courses together so more people can learn, and putting more resources on the website. I already put a lot of resources there. I want to put even more.
Great. No, I definitely agree. It's already a fascinating website. I learned a lot from my so far rather brief encounter, but I will be back, and we'll certainly put the details on. Perhaps we could just come to one last question then. Basically, you've been on this long journey, you've learned a great deal. Many of the audience for the podcast are innovators, entrepreneurs, looking perhaps to start something for the first time. So they've got an idea, they want that to create value, to have impact somewhere. With your experience and the various things you've done, and as I said earlier, you've played several roles inside companies, starting things up and so on. If I asked you to be Uncle Marcelo for a moment
Mm-hmm.
and pass on some wisdom to someone perhaps just starting out on this innovation journey, apart from buy your book and use the framework, but apart from that, what advice might you give them?
Yeah, I would say the most important thing is to really know what problem you're solving better than your customer, right? You really want to understand your customer really well, and what problem they have and why is that important to them, why is it urgent to them, why they need to address it. So be an expert in the problem, not in the solution. That would be my advice.
That's lovely. That sounds a very appropriate piece of advice. Marcelo, thank you so much. I hope we can talk again, and I'm certainly going to dig a lot more deeply into this. I'm fascinated by this whole approach. But for now, thank you very much.
Thank you, John.